Yeah. So today we are going to talk about what I am calling a mindful pulse. And it's basically going to talk about heart rate variability. And the biggest thing that you need to know is that I am certainly not an expert on this particular topic, although I've read a bunch of books. I do it a lot and it matters to my practice. It matters here at Corazon a lot, which I think that you'll probably see a very large link between what we do in holistic health and how that relates to heart rate variability. This is just an additional measure to help you understand how healthy and resilient you are and ways that you can impact that heart rate variability so that you have greater resiliency if your resiliency happens to be low, like right now, because of illness or trauma or just regular old stress, which also does it. So my name is Melanie Peebles. I work here at Corazon Holistic Health. I'm one of the clinicians. I also supervise the other clinicians here. I've been in the field for about 15, no, that's wrong, 18 years, aging myself a little bit. Um, so that's a little bit about me and where I kind of come from. Um, Sorry, my screen isn't doing precisely what I want it to do. Okay. So, what is heart rate variability? Heart rate variability is the variation between heartbeats. It is more than just your pulse rate. Your pulse rate is what you're hearing, like, and what you're feeling in your arm, like, or when the doctor takes it at a checkup, and it's that bump, 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 bump. You'll notice on the slide that there are little, so the bumps are the peaks, and then in the middle is that variability piece. You'll notice that between them, they're not regular, they're not completely uniform. That space in between, those milliseconds, like in between, that is what is being measured when we talk about heart rate variability. It is a measure of like health resilience. What that basically means is that it is your capacity to heal from injury, your capacity to heal from illness, but also from a psychological place, your ability to be flexible and adaptable when things are stressful or they're not going maybe the way that like you want them to go. It's also an indication of whether or not your ANS, your autonomic nervous system, is in balance. And when I'm talking about the autonomic nervous system, what I mean mostly is the balance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. So that parasympathetic nervous system is what tells us to rest and digest. And the sympathetic nervous system is what we think of as fight or flight. That's the piece that is activated when we need to do some of those things. Now, going further with that, if we talk about it from a polyvagal standpoint, which is the way that I think about it, there's three different states. So there's a ventral vagal, that is when you are engaged and connected. And then there's the sympathetic, that's fight or flight. We already know that. And then there's dorsal. Dorsal is freeze or fawn. So those are the three different types of nervous system um, activation places. So ventral vagal is one of the places that we want to stay when it's the right time to stay. But what I mean by being in balance, like it's not wrong to go into your sympathetic nervous system, and it is not wrong to be in that dorsal stage. Like those are all useful and beneficial things that help keep us safe. And we need that entire nervous system to work together and to work really efficiently in order for it to best serve us. If you have questions, let me know. So, why does heart rate variability matter? Like, going further, what does that mean? It is a biological marker for the impact of stress. It shows how it is that my body and how quickly I not only react to distress or stressful events, but how quickly I can get back to a baseline or how quickly I can get back to ventral vagal. It measures like that adaptability. So I use the word respond and react. If I hear, okay, say I'm walking in the woods and I hear rustling and I hear a low, gurgly, growling noise, you don't want me to respond to that because that is moving very, very slowly. You want to react to that, right? Like that is when fight or flight is appropriate. Because to be fair, like if I'm hearing a gurgly, growling noise, I'm going to run. I'm going to run as fast as I possibly can because whatever hungry lion is behind me, I would like it to not eat my face. But then when the threat is gone, I want to be able to have my body get back to baseline or where it feels calm and safe and engaged and connected as quickly as possible. Heart rate variability helps to tell us how quickly that's going to happen. So you'll see in the image here that there's a stimulus, so that's that stress. And you start off at that baseline, and then stress happens, we dip down into those lower levels of our nervous system. And then once time has passed and the stress has gone, we get back to a recovery state and hopefully go above like that baseline at some point in time. Like we get back to healthier place. So our blood pressure reduces and our heart rate slows down, our breathing decreases, things like that. It so with regards to reacting versus responding, your nervous system needs to be able to respond, not react. React is that very quick, fast, there's no thinking. That is appropriate when there is true danger. Okay, that's important. When there is true danger, it needs to respond when maybe in that same scenario, what if I'm in the woods and it's dark outside and I hear rustling and gurgling or whatever, growling, but I know that my dog's with me, right? And he's just running up to greet me, right? I don't want to run away from my own dog. That's probably not all that helpful because I know that he's with me. Like I'm still going to respond, like I'm still going to have that little like moment where I'm like, "Oh, wait, hang on, what is that?" But if I'm overreacting or if I'm hypervigilant or if my system is out of balance, I might run and not be able to respond in the way that makes sense for the situation. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. I'm asking the audience.
And I'll take myself off mute, and I'm with you.
Yeah. And it shows in the balance states between, like I said, ventral, sympathetic, and dorsal. We want to make sure that all of those things like react together. And we also want to be able to have blended states whenever possible. So that's when maybe I'm engaged and connected, but I need to have activated muscles because I'm playing soccer, right? Or I'm playing a tennis game. Like that makes sense. But I don't want that tennis match that then stresses my body to turn into something that then makes me ill later because it hurts my body so badly because it does not recover well enough. That's another reason why heart rate variability is pretty important because it shows whether or not we'll be able to recover from those things as well. Questions? All right, so everybody loves to know this, like how are we going to measure it? And what's a good heart rate variability? Okay, so my hot take on normative data, which is that it's normative, meaning that yes, this is a range of what is going to be true for most people. Now, we're also all very unique. We have different circumstances. So these are not hard and fast rules. I don't want you to look at this chart and be like, oh my gosh, like I'm 22, but my heart rate variability is that of a 30-year-old. Okay. That might not be that big of a deal. I don't know. Like we have to gauge it over time. And it's also not a blip. This is one of those things that I know that as Americans, we really love things to happen immediately and to be able to see what's happening right now in this moment, and that be the capital T truth. That's just not how heart rate variability works. It's better if you're able to measure it over a period of time, say 3, 6, 12 months, and show how that changes over time. And then how to track how it changes as you change your lifestyle, right? So I want my heart rate variability to continue to be nice and high. If say I'm a runner, but typically I only run 5 miles, but I I'm one of those people that thinks it's a good idea to go and run a marathon. I need to make sure that my heart rate variability remains in this realm so that I'm still good at doing this and that I recover well from those things. I have lots of clients that enjoy doing, like CrossFit and let's walk rim to rim on the Grand Canyon, right? Like we need to make sure that this person's body is able to recover from that. Heart rate variability is a really good way to see whether or not that's going to happen and if you can like your body's going to get back to baseline. So that being said, lots of people have these little smartwatches. I have one. Some of you have one. That naturally, all of the ones that I am aware of, like Apple Watch, the Fossil one, Fitbit, and there's a Samsung one. All of them will measure heart rate variability. It's built into the watch, which is really nice. From what I read, it is pretty accurate and reliable. I went and looked at those 5 watches to make sure that that was actually true before I said that. And yes, that is true. There are also apps that you can download on your phone or on other devices, and you can buy other specific devices. I have something that's called like Pulsetto, which is this thing that you stick around your neck. I should have brought it. I forgot it, but it gives you electrical pulses to stimulate the vagus nerve, but it also measures heart rate variability. I also use an app on my phone called Welltory, and it measures according to what my watch tells it, and it measures by covering up my camera with my fingers to measure heart rate variability. And it does this really cool thing is it spits out this little guide that says this is what your health rate is. This is how much energy you have, and this is how resilient you are today. So it puts you in these measures. And what's really interesting about it is that it tells me that I'm probably getting sick before I know I'm getting sick, which I think is fascinating. It predicted like period cramping and stuff like that for me, which was great. Not in the way that it said like you're going to have cramps on like this day or whatever, but in the way that it says you're looking a little under the weather today. Like you're not like at optimum levels. And then when I look and I'm like, what's going on? Like I didn't sleep great last night, like whatever, whatever. And I look and it was because my period was due that day, which I was like, that's interesting. And then yesterday, I was actually reading through these slides, and this is one of those things that I think is really fascinating. And my kid, who's 15, is sitting there and wanting to know all of this information. And she says, Mommy, what is your heart rate variability like right now? And I show her that app or whatever. And she's like, cool, can I use it? So then she's using it. So it's getting like all these extra like measurements and things. I then get an alert on my phone after I go through all of the slides, and we're going to do some breathing techniques in a little bit that help influence that heart rate variability. And my heart rate variability was lower than usual yesterday. I had a really bad migraine. And I was reading over these slides between 4:30 and 5:30 yesterday. And at the end, when I was doing one of the deep breathing exercises that I'm going to show all of you how to do, I jumped 10 points in my heart rate variability from doing it, which I was like, that's interesting. Because typically you aren't going to see results that happen that quickly, but it did in that moment for whatever reason. It's probably because I felt so ill that any improvement was probably going to be better than anything else. So that was really interesting that that happened. Um, I would encourage you to like look at those kinds of things. It's just an extra piece of like data to look at so that you better understand like yourself. Lots of folks use these measurements when they're ill. So checking it, like if I have the flu, let's check to see like where my heart rate variability is. Like, what is it saying? After I do a strenuous workout, what is it saying pre, post, and pre, during, and post like workout, because that can be an indication of whether or not, and I'm going to get to a slide later that's going to talk about what type of activity is going to be best for you to influence your heart rate variability. And it's just one of those things that helps like track. And it doesn't have to be like cumbersome or anything like that. You can do it periodically. And the cool thing is that all of these apps, like they keep that data, like the one on my watch specifically, the Weltery app, as well as the one that just comes like with my regular old Apple Watch, it tracks it daily, weekly, 6 month and 12 month increments. So I like have that data over a period of time, which then helps me track better what's going on, which I find very useful. The other thing that you'll see like on this particular slide is a heart rate variability versus age chart, and it is showing it starts at age 14 down here at the bottom all the way to 77. And then it goes from like a 0 heart rate variability all the way up to 90. And as you see, like it decreases like as you get older, and then it kind of levels out at a certain part. But it also shows that there's a difference between like how men and women um, score on these things. All right. So going back to what I said, I'm mid 40s. So here you can see like this mid 40 like place, and my heart rate variability should be around here, which is about 35 to 38, which is what I'm going to say according to this. If somebody is older than me, say we're 67, that means that person's heart rate variability actually is pretty similar to like what mine is supposed to be. It doesn't change a whole lot. We have like this plateau that happens, but when my kid was looking at it, like my child is 15, so we're way up here. So Kennedy Grace's heart, this is that ventral vagal state. It's engaging with your peers and shared interests. It's as easy as going to a yoga class with a friend. It could be engaging in family therapy. It could be going to a coffee shop with your best friend, having and sharing meals together, um, joining a political group, and doing things to make things better for the rest of us. It could be maybe at work you feel really connected with the people that you work with and joining them in a meeting. Any of like those kinds of things that help with like that social connection piece. It can be like a lot of external things that you're doing, but there's internal things as well. So thinking of inside and outside of the home. That social connection is also not limited to people. It is limited to, it is also encompassing causes, animals and pets, nature and being outside. It's all of that. All of that matters with that connection and shared interest because it gives us a greater sense of stability, like on the inside. There was a research study that I read several years ago, but it was talking about folks who spend 30 minutes outside in the sunshine, and they were just tracking like depression levels, and the depression was significantly lower for people who go and like hang out and touch grass, so to speak, than the ones who are cooped up inside all of the time. Like there's something that is protective and helps our resiliency when we're out and about, and it also happens to increase your heart rate variability with that connection piece as well. The reasoning behind that is because if I'm with safe people and I'm in safe places and events and I'm surrounded by those who have some sort of love or affection for me, or at least they give a crap about me and want me to not, get hurt, I feel safer, not just psychologically, but biologically. Like my body knows that. It's something called neuroception. It is your ability to detect whether or not another human being is safe, right? We see this in a lot of like places. It can also be called like limbic resonance or co-regulation. If you go to a sporting event, right? Like I don't care about sports ball, let's be clear. Like I am not that girl. But if you see me at a Carolina football game, I will be jumping up and cheering like everybody else. And if we win, I might even cry because it will be so exciting because I'm being flooded with all of the feelings and all of the emotion of all of the people around me, right? And it's this exciting, like celebratory kind of event. That's one of those things that can be really, really good just for the way that you feel and for how your body feels safe. Okay. Safety means that we're in our parasympathetic nervous system. I cannot rest and digest if I am not safe. The contrast is also true. So if we talk about that in a different way, like say you come home and I don't know, you live with somebody you don't particularly like, or they're kind of a downer. You know if that person had a good day or a bad day before they say anything, right? Like there's something in the air, you feel the tension. When I do family counseling, one of the things that I notice is that I have the families or the couple sit in my office maybe a minute, maybe two. It's a very short period of time, but I do that on purpose to see what it feels like when I walk in, right? Because it gives me a gauge of how uncomfortable is whatever is going on. Because most people are coming to see me because something isn't like quite right yet, or maybe they're trying to maintain something. But initially, most people are coming because something is bad and it feels yucky. And if that's true, then I'm going to feel that as much as that, not maybe not as much, but I will at least sense it because of that neuroception. Okay. That's a pretty important like piece of that. So engaging in those things where we do not feel like that level of stress or anxiety can be really important. And we can't avoid it altogether. Like that's going to happen. But even one of the things that I thought was very sweet yesterday when I showed the slide to my kid, Kennedy said, "Is that why everybody's sad at a funeral, even if you didn't know the person?" And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "But what do you think about that? Do you think that's protective or do you think that that is a bad thing?" And she said, and she's being very thoughtful, but says, "I think it must be protective because you always tell me that grief is better done with people." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's why we do it socially." So even something as tragic and as sad as something like that can be something that is very good for us and brings us more health and resilience. All right, so next is nutrition. Um, Not a nutritionist. We have one though. You should talk to Zoe. She's great. Um, we want to make sure that we are eating enough high quality food that meets your fuel needs. You'll notice that I don't have a diet on there. You'll notice that I'm not telling you how many calories you should eat, or what kinds of food you should eat, or when you should eat, or if you should fast, or if you should not fast, or any of those other kinds of things. There's a good reason for that. And that is because every single person has a different need for nutrition. Age matters, activity matters, what time of day it is matters, like all of those things matter. So that being said, like the bigger thing to do is to stabilize blood sugar. Okay. Having really extreme highs and lows in blood sugar are the things that really mess with our heart rate variability and makes it so that we are less health resilient. And it shows like if I'm on one of those days where I am not being kind to myself and I see back to back people and I don't leave enough time for a snack or something to eat, my heart rate variability is much lower on those days. And the good thing is that it gets back to where it needs to be. But if I were to do that a lot and do it over and over and over again, that would have a negative impact on me because it's stressful. One of the other things that like we know just about blood sugar and insulin resistance and things of that nature are that the more stress you are under, the more likely it is that you have some level of insulin intolerance. Now, what does that mean? That means that your body does not break down the glucose and balance it as well as it could. And it is simply because the amount of stress that you are under, or if you have a trauma experience. So I have a client who is insulin resistant and she was being monitored with one, that little thing that you stick on the back of your arm. She had been wearing it for several weeks. She was doing a fantastic job, like eating all the things and exercising, doing all of these things. And she was getting it to a place where she felt like she was really able to predict like what the outcome was going to be, like, and if her blood sugar would spike during certain times. She works in the healthcare field. She knows a lot of things that I know. And one of the things that she said is, "I want to wear it during our next session." And I said, "Great, we should do that." So she wears it. And she says, "I want to check it to see like how my blood sugar reacts to what we are going to talk about today." Now, in that particular session, I was doing a very targeted, trauma focused counseling service. So what that means is that we were going to talk about trauma and we were going to be in it, like super duper, like in it, getting into the ick, getting into the gross, and all of the feelings that come along with that. She had eaten before she came. She didn't eat right before she came. She gave a good 2 hours. She had enough protein. Everything had been stable and it was looking glorious for days and days and days and days. When I use a very specific phrase that helps to activate our nervous system, like that is on purpose because I'm doing purposeful activation of the nervous system so that we can help desensitize it. As soon as I did that, I look at my watch because I always want to see like how long am I going to have to process with this person. And when I looked at it, it said it was 5:44. Now that matters because we did all of our trauma focused stuff. Like she comes back, I reground her once we are finished. And she said, and we're talking and chatting and debriefing, but then she says, "Let me look at what my app says." And I said, "Okay, great. Let's see." She looks and she says, I had a spike in my blood sugar. I said, well, when was it? She was like, it was at 544. Which I was like, that's an interesting piece. And granted, that is some anecdotal information, like for me specifically, but research indicates that that's absolutely one of the things that's happening behind the scenes all the time, especially for our trauma survivors. But then it went right back to baseline once we grounded and once we got back to where she was supposed to be. And once we had desensitized what was going on. I don't know. The body's weird. The body is amazing and very, very cool. It was one of those things where it was like, I wish I could have those for everybody so we could track all of that. You know, if I had $1 million, that's what we do, right? So that's nutrition. Finding ways to stabilize that blood sugar is gonna help. Movement. Now, this is what I talked about earlier about like what kind of movement we are doing. So there is aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Um, this is what you need to know. This is the quick and dirty version of like what that actually means. Aerobic respiration is when you are within a window of tolerance. It means that you are using the fuel that you physically have in your body. Anaerobic respiration is using your emergency fuel. Okay. That emergency fuel needs to be there if you're activated, right? But if you are training for a marathon, you want to stay in aerobic respiration, meaning that you and I are still able to have at least somewhat of a conversation. I am not gasping for air. I'm not getting stitches in my side, like those sorts of things, right? It makes me think of like all of those things where when Taylor Swift was doing the Eras tour, right? And she would sing and run on a treadmill at the same time, which also that's very cool. But I bet her heart rate variability is peak. I bet it's amazing because I couldn't sing a song and run on a treadmill. But that's that piece of it. We want to make sure that we are using the fuel that we have, not the stuff that's in our safety reserve. Like that actually needs to be used when something's wrong. If we keep dipping into that, it impacts like whether or not we can recover, whether or not we have like injury, whether or not we are able to get up and do the workout the next day. Like that's when you work out and you can't work out for 3 more days afterwards because you pushed it too hard and your body is literally telling you, stop doing that to me. It hurts. So one of the things that like people want to know, like, how do I figure out like what my aerobic respiration is? So the best way to figure out like where your best respiration is, you subtract your age from 180. And that is what your heart rate should be so that you stay in aerobic respiration. If it's higher than that, you're going to go into anaerobic. Questions? Okay. And lastly, but not least, rest, quality rest. This is going to go back to all those smart devices that I was talking about. All of those handy dandy little apps that will look at your heart rate variability and tell you what it is. They also have varying levels to show you what sleep looks like and will tell you whether or not you're in deep sleep, REM sleep, core sleep, all the other different versions of sleep. That matters because we need a certain amount of deep sleep as opposed to REM sleep, as opposed to core sleep. We need that, and we should be able to go through at least 2 cycles for a sleeping pattern. And usually that happens between 7 and 9 hours. When you're feeling groggy, typically that means that I'm waking up like at a time that's not peak for me. So for instance, one of the things that's really cool about that app that I use is it tells me when my most optimal time to go to bed and when to wake up is. And it's pretty stinking accurate, which is amazing. So I'm best if I go to bed between 10:30 and 11 o'clock, and I am up between like 6:45 and 7:15. That gives me the best amount of sleep, and I'm going to feel my best when I get up. Rest isn't just about sleep. It is about rest days between like vigorous workouts. So that marathon that you're training for, there has to be rest days like in there. I work with so many people who think rest is a 4-letter word and that it is something to be avoided. um, it doesn't mean that you're not going to engage in movement, but it might mean that you're not getting that aerobic exercise, right? You're stretching, you're doing something more gentle, you're engaging like the muscles in your body in a different way that just help you feel like you're moving and you're lubricating all of those joints and stuff, which is good for you, but we're not getting to the place of exhaustion. That's not the That's not the goal. And then the other part of rest that I actually know more about is mindfulness practices, and that's what we're going to be doing a lot on these next couple of slides. There's also a little tiny picture on the side there that just shows the things that influence heart rate variability, the things that increase. Interesting. Say that again. Yeah, lots of people drink caffeine, right? I mean, caffeine and we're not friends. I don't know her. I do know kombucha though, and I do love that. All right, let's move on to now we can do the fun part. We can do practices. Like I said, you will get this PowerPoint. That way you at least have some of these brief instructions. It doesn't go completely into everything that I'm going to tell you, but it hopefully will give you enough information so that you can cue it up yourself if you want to. And now we're going to practice. So I have that up, but I think what I'm going to do is to stop sharing so that you can see my face as we do these things, which I think would probably help us a little bit more. So what we're going to do is we're going to do what's called salamander exercise, but it's just for the neck and the shoulders. There's an entire full body one that I think the full body one is in breath. No, it's in heal your nervous system. The whole thing is in there. And you can also look it up. There's lots of ways to do it, but I just wanted to do this one specific one. And the reason why we're going to focus on this very specific one is because it helps open your airway and to make it so that you can have more airflow, which is the whole point of what we're doing like today to help that respiration so that we can get to a place of an increase in heart rate variability. So these are the practices that I did yesterday that showed my tick up, which was interesting. So the first one, we're going to track our necks. So get into a nice, comfortable seated position. Try to have your spine like as straight as possible. Usually helps when we're in that place. We're in that nice straight spine, right? And eyes are going to be forward. And then what you're going to do is you'll track your eyes to the right, all the way to the right, as if you're trying to look inside your ear, in that right ear. And then you're going to gently take, as you're still looking to that right side, let your ear drop to your shoulder, nice and slowly, until you start feeling a stretch. And then you'll breathe. All the while continuing to look to the right as well as that nice lean to the right. Making sure your ear is coming to your shoulders and not your shoulders coming to your ear. Making those small adjustments if you need them. One more breath in. And then come back to a nice neutral spine, nice and slowly bringing your eyes back to the front. Now we have two sides, so I don't want you walking around in a circle later. So we're going to make sure that we look to the left. I'm trying to look inside of that ear and then drop the left ear to the shoulder until you feel that gentle stretch. Again, paying attention to alignment, paying attention to the ear dropping to the shoulders and not the shoulders coming up to the ear. One more deep breath in. And at the bottom of that breath, you can bring it back up. Nice, easy. Good, 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 good. I don't know like what you noticed. One of the things that I noticed was if my eyes started to track back to center, I noticed that it felt like I wasn't stretching quite as deeply, but if I moved my eyes back to that ear, that the stretch felt deeper, which I think is just an interesting piece of information. Feel okay in your neck? Hmm,
Yes.
good. I don't know, I hold a lot of tension there, so I happen to very much enjoy that one. So in order to do this like really effectively, we only did it that one time. You should do cycles of 3 to 5 times to get it so that it really like gets that neck mobile and moving.
Did you have a time like on purpose, like 20 seconds, 15 seconds? Or
I
what?
use 3 breaths.
Three
Yep.
breaths. Okay.
Yep. 3 breaths is what I use. Um, my suggestion is that you do that to what feels the most comfortable for you. If 5 feels better, then use 5. I think 3 is probably the minimum that you should do. Because we want to make sure that we stay there long enough to actually allow those muscles to release. So we want to hang out there for a minute. Yeah.
What was the book you said that the nervous system book that you said that was in? I've never heard of that, the salamander.
Ugh. Heal the nervous system.
Heal the nervous system.
Yep. It's again, like it's at the very end of the PowerPoint. Like I have everything listed, so you'll be able to pull it up and find it because I want everybody to have access to these because I happen to think they're useful. Okay. I'm going to go back into the PowerPoint where we were. Making sure that you're, like I said, repeating both rights and left sides. And then the whole point of doing that is it increases your capacity for like that breath. So meaning like lung capacity. So it allows you to bring more air in so you can fill up that lung and then allow it to release. And then it also relieves tension in the neck and shoulders, which always feels nice. Okay, so repeating that on both sides. And then the next one, oh, doesn't want to change. Why don't we want to change? There we go. So this next one is called cadence or resonant breathing. It's called a lot of different things, but it's essentially like the same thing. And I'll cue this in a moment. I will bring me out of here, but I want to read this piece of it that I think is really, really fascinating. The number 5 is going to keep coming up in this specific one, and there's a reason for that. And this is a direct quote from like Breath. But it says in 2001, researchers at the University of Pavia in Italy gathered 24 subjects, covered them with sensors to measure blood flow, heart rate, and nervous system feedback, then had them recite the Buddhist mantra as well as the original Latin version of the Rosary, the Catholic prayer cycle of the Ave Maria, which is repeated half by the priest and half by the congregation. So it's that back and forth thing. They were stunned to find out that the average number of breaths for each cycle was almost exactly identical, just a bit quicker than the pace of the Hindu, Taoist, and the Native American prayers, 5.5 breaths per minute. I think the reason why that stands out to me is that it almost is one of those things that becomes then a universal truth, that if we are able to stay in that level of breath, that 5.5 breaths per minute, then we're going to have our bodies work at their peak. And that's what this particular one is going to help you do. So what you'll do is you'll be in a nice comfy place, sitting up straight. This one's best seated, not lying down, and not standing. The other one you can do standing that I just did, but this one is just for like that seated position. You're going to inhale like through the nose, and I will count them down to 5, like on my hands. You will exhale in your mouth with 5. Okay. And then we will do an entire round of 5. Okay. So if I go too fast or too slow, just ignore me and do it at your pace. Like you don't have to do it my way. Do it your way. All right. So nice and comfy, breathing normal, breathing in and out through the mouth, in through the nose. Last round. I don't know about you, but now I kind of want to take a nap. I like that one a lot. Practicing that, when I was reading on it, they were suggesting, the researchers suggest that you do it at night before bedtime, which I can absolutely see how that one would work for that. And to be able to do it for 5 or 10 minutes, it doesn't have to be much longer than that, but you do it daily. And that's how it starts to, that buildup of learning that breath and that nice circular inhale, exhale will then help with all of those things. Juliet, does that remind you of anything that like you do like in yoga?
Oh yeah. And I was thinking in breath, don't they call it something like the perfect breath or something like that? Because it's like
Yeah.
that's the perfect breath pattern that we should always work toward. Uh,
Yeah.
that perfect breath.
It is called the perfect breath.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
what, yeah, because that was and that breath book is really good. That was
It's so
really
good.
eye-opening because I have that one too.
Yeah, there's so many things that like I mean you can see like all of these little like I have all of these little tabs in here. There's like 12 of them and I was like, okay, you cannot put all of this into like an hour presentation.
There's another really good one called The Science of Breath by Swami Ra.
Yeah,
If you've never read that one's really good too.
it is really good. Yeah, I mean I had there was no shortage of information that I could draw from for sure. Okay, so that's this one and it shows the inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth, the count of 5 daily, 5 minutes. So those are your prompts that are on that. And then our very last practice is going to be alternate nostril breathing. So this is in breath. It tells you all of the science. It's an entire chapter on right and left nostril breathing and how we naturally do that all day. Like one part of the nose will engorge and then close up, and then the other one will be open and you can breathe, and then it'll go about 30 minutes, and then it goes and switches to the other side, which is really interesting. The piece that I thought was most interesting for like this particular part of like what we're doing is that that right nostril increases circulation, cortisol, excuse me, cortisol levels, heart rate, and blood pressure. And it is most closely associated with sympathetic nervous system activation, that right nostril, which is really interesting to me. And then if it's in the right nostril, it's going to the left side of the brain, which is also connected more deeply to that prefrontal cortex, that logic side of the brain, which I thought was fascinating too. So, because it's, remember, if it's happening on this side, it's actually this side of the brain. Because why wouldn't it go completely linearly? We don't know. Still an elegant design though. The left nostril does the absolute opposite of that, where it's like decreasing all of those things and engages your parasympathetic nervous system and uses more of the right side of your brain, which is where our creativity happens. I just think all of that is really, really fascinating. As it relates to heart rate variability, the more you're able to stay again in that parasympathetic nervous system, the more likely you are to have a higher heart rate variability. So on this one, what we'll do is we'll close the nostrils. Now, there are about 1.5 million ways that you can put your hands on this. The way that they suggest that you do your hands is that you have your pointer finger and your middle finger in the center of your forehead and your thumb on the right side of your nose and then your ring finger on the left side of your nose. I know my voice changes when I do that because I can't breathe. So that's how it does it. I'm not going to do it like that because that feels extremely uncomfortable to me. I just do it like this, like, or you could, I mean, there's so many different ways. So position your hands the way you feel most comfortable because that's the whole purpose of it. So what you're going to do is you're going to do an entire cycle inside of breathing in one side, and then you close to hold, and it's a little pause, and breathing out the same side, and then you switch. Okay, so I'll cue it up. So close the right nostril, inhale through the left, close both, pause. Exhale right. Close. Inhale right. Close. Exhale left. Inhale left. Close. Inhale right. Close. Exhale left. Inhale left. Close. Exhale right. Inhale right. Close. Exhale left. And then you can breathe normally. Anybody's nose real stuffy? I can hear Sophia and myself in my ears. Yeah. I actually really enjoy doing that one when I'm congested, because it does help to alleviate some of that congestion, which I think is really fascinating, which seems really counterintuitive to me. To be like, no, we want you to close up the side of your face you can actually breathe out of. Whoa. That's funny.
So, but that's
Thank you
really
so much for hanging out with
Thank
me.
you. It was good. I enjoyed it.
I'm so glad. I hope it was useful and that you take away a little nugget of some